Hello, everybody. Welcome to Moment of Clarity. Thanks for joining me. Thanks for being here. The United States caused this earthquake, man. They used an earthquake gun and they fucking shot it down. I love that. I love that some people took my title literally. No, what they caused and continue to cause is the insane death toll of this earthquake. So we'll be getting into that. But I love that simply by titling it that. I already have people in the comment thread going, "Oh, please. No, they didn't cause the earthquake, man. Earthquakes, you see, the way earthquakes work is the earth hits the earth." And okay, shut up, you idiot. But yes, we're gonna get into, well, I'll get into this. Let me just show you some of the headlines before I get into raging about this goddamn earthquake and the number of people killed in it. Oh, and I'm gonna get to other stories as well. Let's see, something about what Biden talked about in the State of the Union, which is a heaping, steaming pile of I'll go dead wild boar, festering, steaming, dead wild boar. That's what I'm going with for that one. We're gonna get into. I'm gonna play you clips of both AOC and Tucker Carlson and explain why you should hate them both. So we got a little something for everybody. Little something for everybody. That's how I like to do it. I like to sprinkle little spice in for everyone. But first, let me show you some of these headlines. Oh, by the way, everybody share this. Let people know. Share it with your friends. Hit the thumbs up. Hit the like. Hit the follows, etc., etc. First, I want to show you some of the headlines about the earthquake. You probably know this. Many of you already know. This quake has killed a crazy number of people already. Death toll passes 11,600 in Turkey and Syria. That's from the New York Times. Whole buildings obviously coming down on people. But we shot him with the earthquake gun. Which is probably not that far off. I mean, look at our technology. How far off could an earthquake gun really be? A couple of weeks? What do you think? Where the hell is the other headline I wanted to show you? There it is. WHO estimates that 23 million could be impeached. Could be impeached. Well, whatever. Could be impeached. That's a lot of people to impeach. No, 23 million people could be impacted by the earthquakes in Turkey and Syria. So you got 11,600 already dead. They're estimating that upwards of 25,000 could ultimately be proven dead by this earthquake. And it's multiple earthquakes, right? There was a 7.8 and a 7.6, and now they've had something like 200 aftershocks. Just crazy, crazy destruction going on there. And it's being made so much worse by the United States, which is what I really want to get into, because that other stuff that I just gave you is the surface level, right? That's what you get from the mainstream media. You can turn them on right now, as I did, and I showed you New York Times. You can turn them on and find out how many people have died in this earthquake to some degree of accuracy. But what they aren't telling you, what they won't tell you, what they can't tell you, and what they don't want you to know is the amount of destruction and harm in these earthquakes that U.S. sanctions are currently causing. U.S. sanctions, and by the way, sanctions is a euphemism. It's a nice term. It's a friendly term. It's like getting stabbed, by your wife, but then you're kind of trying to defend her. So you're like, she added a knife-shaped object to my body. It's a crazy euphemism. I don't know why. It didn't have to be a wife, all right? Don't get on me about the women hate, all right? Let's say you were stabbed by your husband, which is far more common. So I probably should have used that one. It's far more common that men are the ones doing the stabbing. But anyway, and you use some euphemism for, there was a knife relocation in my hip area. There was a piece of rare earth metals was inserted into my stomach in a accidental procedural game that we play after dinner every night. Anyway, sanctions is a bullshit euphemism. So economic war against Syria has made this earthquake so much worse. Sanctions imposed, this is from People's Dispatch, sanctions imposed by U.S. and allies hamper relief and rescue work in earthquake-devastated Syria. And I want to give you this article as well, but I also want to say that this article is not even getting into some of the depths of it, but they're still doing good work here. But the head of the Syrian Arab Red Crescent demanded on Tuesday, February 7th, that Western countries, specifically the U.S. and allies, lift their siege and sanctions on Syria so that rescue and relief work can proceed unimpeded after the country was devastated by a powerful earthquake on Monday. Quote, "We need heavy equipment, ambulances, and firefighting vehicles to continue to rescue and remove rubble, and this entails lifting sanctions on Syria as soon as possible." So, besides the other things I'm about to get into, literally the U.S. is stopping relief efforts from entering Syria. Literally, the U.S. and Western allies are trying to make sure that people dying under buildings can't get the relief and medical needs that they desperately need. Yes, I used the word need twice in that sentence, and I apologize, all right? Why do you always got to get on me for a little poor word usage? Literally, though, they are stopping relief efforts for people, for completely innocent, incredibly poor, because, why are you saying that people in Syria are poorly? Isn't that discriminatory? No, 90% of Syria is below the poverty line, which I'll get more into that in a minute. But literally right now, the U.S. has said, no, we will not even create a gap in the sanctions, even say for 1 week, you can bring in heavy machinery, you can bring in medicine, you can bring in all these things to help all these people that are struggling, because that's the level of psychopath we are. And here's the thing, even if you disagree with me on everything, I hope you agree that's wildly fucked up. That that our government, that these people that are our so-called rulers, our leaders, these people that lead us, that they are sitting around going, no, let the kid that is trapped, let the 3-year-old that is trapped under that building, let him die, because that will help us in our geopolitical power game against Syria as a proxy war against Russia. That'll help us. If that 3-year-old that they just recovered from the rubble, who's barely surviving, if he doesn't get his medicine in order to survive, if he doesn't get the proper medical equipment in order to survive from this earthquake, then that really is going to help us in our proxy war against Russia. That is going to make things just go a lot better. It's really going to teach Syria, teach Assad a lesson. Of course not. Of course it fucking won't. It does nothing but kill that child. And that's what level of sociopath and psychopaths are at the top of this country. That's who they are. That's what they stand for. And they're saying it right now. The powerful earthquake registering a magnitude 7.8 struck Turkey and Syria, and they don't mention all the aftershocks. One of them was 7.6. So really, it's a series of earthquakes. This gives some death tolls, but those are inaccurate. It's much higher now. It's over 11,000 now, and they believe it will go up to 25,000 at least. Though several countries, including the U.S. and its allies, have extended their support to Turkey in its relief and rescue work, they have refused to extend similar assistance to Syria. The U.S. State Department made it clear on Monday that it was only willing to support some work carried out in Syria by NGOs, non-governmental organizations, which basically means like our CIA offshoots like USAID. That's the work we'll let into Syria. But that it would not allow dealings with the Assad government. Lifting of sanctions will open doors for additional and supplemental aid that will provide immediate relief to those in need, said the American Arab Anti-Discrimination Committee. The U.S. Congress has adopted the so-called Caesar Act in 2020, according to which any group or company doing business with the Syrian government faces sanctions and could face things like prison or crazy fines. So this is what we stand for. And for those of you who think that if there's anyone out there who thinks, oh, well, this isn't intentional by the U.S., they're not willing to stop their economic war at the moment, but they're not willing to stop their economic war at the moment, but it's not that they intentionally want people to be harmed by this. If any of you out there are so naive as to believe that, and I don't mean to be insulting you, maybe you just haven't looked into this stuff. Former Secretary of State Rex Tillerson, when he was Secretary of State, so this is under Trump, but honestly, they're all the same. And if you follow my shit, then you understand how they're all the same. But so under Trump said publicly, there's video, I've played it on various episodes. Rex Tillerson said publicly that the way we know our sanctions on North Korea are working, are doing great, are wonderful, is that North Korean fishermen are washing up dead, starved to death, or frozen to death in their boats. They wash up in South Korea, not because they're trying to escape North Korea, but they wash up dead because they are sent out to go fishing for fish, which is, again, Lee with the excellent sentences, that is often what people fish for, is fish. It's one of the most common things that people fish for. You guys know what I mean. Just stop. Yeah, you know what I mean. But they're washing up in their boats dead because they are sent out to fish so deep into the winter that and with so little fuel that they're dying out there. And Rex Tillerson said, that's how we know our sanctions are really having an impact. That North Korea is so hungry that they're sending people out in the middle of winter without enough food and they're dying. And so he literally said in front of other human beings, like this wasn't behind closed doors, it's in front of other fucking humans. He said, this poor fisherman died. Go America. Look at what good we're doing. I mean, it is a mind-numbing level of sociopathy. And that's what not relieving these sanctions, this economic war, not stopping it right now, says about our government, about the U.S. But I actually want to go even deeper than this article because the reason that many Syrians have died or are dying from this earthquake, or maybe they aren't dying, but they're incredibly harmed. Their life is incredibly difficult. They don't know where they're going to find food, etc., is already because of the U.S. sanctions. So even if the U.S. said right now, you know what, we're calling a timeout on the sanctions, we're calling a timeout on the economic war, we're going to let in all the help in the world right now, it still wouldn't change the fact that one of the large reasons that so many people in Syria are dying from this earthquake, from this catastrophe, is because 90% of them, that was the latest UN Rapporteur report. She came back, she went to visit Syria, she met dozens and dozens of people, she analyzed neighborhoods, she analyzed the government assistance, all of it. And she came back and gave a public talk to the UN and said, 90% of Syrians are below the poverty line, are in poverty. Many of them are starving. Many of them don't have fuel for more than an hour, or if they're lucky, a few hours of light and electricity a day. And so you got a country with 90% of it living in destroyed infrastructure, not clean water, don't have electricity, don't have fuel, don't know where their food's going to come from. 90% of them are below the poverty line. And then you throw an earthquake on top of them. And that's how you end up with so many dead. That's how you end up with so many, with lives so destroyed. So we created the scenario that Syria is now suffering under during this earthquake. So when I say the U.S. is to thank, or the U.S. is responsible for this earthquake horror show, I'm not saying that we shot an earthquake gun. I'm saying you wouldn't have nearly the number of dead, because guess what? You'd have better infrastructure. You'd have buildings rebuilt. You'd have people not living in dilapidated. There you go. I'm trying to talk pretty quick, so I'll give myself a break on that one. Dilapidated. Also, dilapidated is a much cooler word, so I think we should switch to dilapidated. You have people living in dilapidated buildings, and a lot of that's thanks to us. There it is. So I'm sure our Secretary of State, Anthony Blinken, and Rex Tillerson, I'm sure they're high-fiving and circle jerking each other right now, going, yay! Kids are dying in Aleppo, and the fucking children and elderly are dying right now in Syria. Aren't we awesome? Aren't we great? Aren't we the great American country? Aren't we the shining tower on the hill where people are really look up to us and respect us? Oh, man. And that's the side of it that you won't get from your mainstream media. And again, even, People's Dispatch did a good job on this article, but even they didn't get into how you wouldn't have this much death without the sanctions and the war. We've helped create and continue that war for many years, the war that has destroyed that country, the war that has made so many buildings bombed out. I'm not saying Assad doesn't have some responsibility in it. Nowhere have I said that. But we have funded and armed all kinds of groups. There was a time back like 6 years ago, and this was actually reported in the mainstream media. This wasn't even just, wingnut.com. Mainstream media reported this, that at one point, CIA-trained quote-unquote rebels, which often means terrorists, were fighting Pentagon-trained quote-unquote rebels. Because we are funding and arming all kinds of groups over there, not really caring what they'll end up doing with all the funding and arming. We're just kind of like, yeah, go forth and wreak havoc. Because guess what? Geopolitically, it is good for us. It is good for America by the view of our sociopathic leaders. It is good for them if you simply have a failed state and chaos in Syria. That is good. So if they go out and they fight each other, the fucking armed rebels, the armed terrorists fighting each other, al-Nusra and al-Qaeda fighting each other. If you just have, we're sitting here going, all right, great, cool. It means that society is being destroyed. And our ruling elite parasitic vampires are enjoying it. They're high-fiving each other. And so then when you have a natural disaster like this, it's all the worse. And so you guys know I love to talk about the multiple layers of reality that we see in a lot of these stories, and level one is that earthquake in Syria, right? They're telling you all about it. That's mainstream media. Layer two of reality is these sanctions like People's Dispatch is talking about. Layer three of this story is the poverty level in Syria, that you're down to 90% of people are barely scraping by, no electricity. And can you really save people from an earthquake when you have no electricity, no fuel, and no food, and no medicine? No. Those are a lot of the things you use to help people after an earthquake. I'm no doctor, but I'd say after an earthquake, for hurt people, you probably use things like electricity, fuel, food, medicine, medical instruments. Again, I'm no doctor. I know that may be maniac talk right there, but those are the things you probably use. And those are the things we're making sure don't get to Syria. And then layer four of this story that you won't get from mainstream media, and you often don't get from much independent media, is that we are using death and suffering we're in a alliance with death and suffering. The United States is in an alliance with death and suffering of innocent people. We are good buddies. We like them. They're our friend. And so we're basically sending death and suffering to innocent men, women, children, babies, elderly. That's our weapon. And yeah, weapons come in various forms. They're not always shot out of a gun. We didn't shoot this out of an earthquake gun. Sometimes they're fired, they're catapulted at people in other ways. And we have basically sent a death and suffering gun at Syria via economic war. And you're not going to get that from many other media outlets. All right, I want to get on to the next story. A little something from Biden's State of the Union. I intentionally have not done a lot of coverage of the State of the Union. I almost never do because it's a string of bullshit. It is hours of meaningless bullshit with standing ovations throughout. Several years ago, I did a few like live streams of it, and it's just, you can stand. Like you can get through a few minutes. It's like having food poisoning. It's like the first 10 minutes, you're like, this is awful. I'm puking, but I'm going to be okay at the end of this. And then you get like 2 hours in and you're like, I want to die. I want to die. Like, to me, that's what the State of the Union feels like. All right. But I want to talk about one of Biden's new policy initiatives at the State of the Union that's been much talked about. And this also, the State of the Union is yet another way that shows you your mainstream media is a load of garbage on both sides, because they're not real sides, right? You guys get that. You have the liberal media, you have the right-wing media, but they agree on 80 to 90% of all issues. So, and actually later in this episode, I'm going to play a clip of AOC about how she's carefully equivocating, although she did say something positive. So I'm going to show you that as well. You get a little positive, a little negative with her. And then I'm going to show you Tucker Carlson and how he's full of shit. And the nice thing about Tucker Carlson is you can tell, like, as he's saying it, he knows he's full of shit. And he knows. And so I'm going to give you some of that too. You'll get to see both sides, and you'll get to see how they're full of shit. And actually, we'll start with Biden. Now, Biden's full of shit. All right. So one of the things he said, and this article is, it was before the State of the Union, but it's talking about the policy initiative that he sure enough talked about in the State of the Union. He said, he called for universal insulin price cap in the State of the Union. And he said, he called for a recently passed provision capping out-of-pocket insulin payments at $35 a month to be extended to all Americans. Congress has already passed a $35 insulin cap for Medicare beneficiaries in the Inflation Reduction Act last year after Senate Republicans blocked a wider proposal from passing. So now Biden is calling on this to pass for everybody, to give everybody insulin for $35 who needs it. And here's the thing, as with many of these initiatives usually coming from Democrats, this brand comes from Democrats. Republicans have their own brand of bullshit. Everybody loves the smell of their own brand, right? This is typical of something coming from the Democrats. It is positive if you look at just the thing and you don't allow your mind to operate beyond that. If you look at just exactly what they said, we are going to cap insulin costs at $35. If you look just at that and you go, that is a positive thing. You know what? I think people with diabetes should be able to afford their insulin so that they can survive. I think that people with diabetes are humans too, and they should be able to do the thing in majigger babobs, and they should do whatever they want with their life because they are humans too, right? Positive thing. That's how liberals would view it. Then you think about it deeper. Yes, it is positive, but it also raises the question, why isn't it like that for all medications that save people's lives? Why just insulin? Why the fuck would you decide, you know what, only insulin is worthy of being affordable for fucking Americans? And to me, look, I'm saying pass it, right? I'm being fucking, yes, get people the insulin for $35. I'm saying pass it. If anyone's in Congress right now, if you're watching right now in Congress, because I know I have a lot of congressional fans, I have, oh God. In fact, I'd say 90% of everyone watching right now is in Congress. If you're watching right now and you're in Congress, fucking vote for this thing. So yes. However, this should remind everyone how fucked up this system is. Why just insulin? Can anyone give me an argument for why it should only be insulin that is affordable for Americans who are suffering? That's insanity. Oh yeah, AIDS drugs or fucking EpiPens or anything that saves someone's life. How about the defibrillator the paddles? Yeah, those are $8 billion. Let's not make those affordable. How about airbags? Airbags are $10 billion. Let's not make those affordable. How about anything that saves someone's goddamn life is not just affordable, but fucking free? How about that? There's an idea, right? There's an idea. And so here are the layers of reality on this story. You've got the surface layer of reality, which is that headline right there. Biden's calling for insulin price cap. Yay! And Newsom already did it, right? Newsom is the governor of California, and he already put this into play. I think I don't know if it's already active, but in California, I believe they voted to have this price cap on insulin. Excellent. That's the surface layer. That's the one they want you talking about. They want you to go home to your little atomized privacy boxes and say to the two family members that live there with you that it is a good thing. Democrats good. They care about people with diabetes, and they got this insulin passed, and I think that's a good thing. That's what they want the debate to be. And maybe you have a right-winger friend who goes, I don't think so. Listen, this kind of why that's not fair. And the right winger says that why people with diabetes suck or whatever a right winger would say. I don't know. So you get that debate. They want you to stay there. They want you to stay surface layer. They want you to be the water spider that just hops around on the surface of the water, never looks underneath, thinks all of reality takes place on the surface of that lake, nothing down below. So then you get into layer two, which is that the Democrats don't actually stand for helping you, right? They fucking didn't give everybody health care. They didn't even fight to give everybody health care. There was when Obama was passing Obamacare. I love that I couldn't remember the name. When Obama was passing, what's the thing with the care that he did? It was Obama, and he did a thing about caring. There was a thing for Obama where he cared. I don't remember what it was called. Maybe Barack Care. So when he passed Obamacare, they didn't even fight to actually give everyone health care. Universal health care was never legitimately on the table. If Democrats actually cared about you, they would have said maybe they would have fallen back to the bullshit Obamacare that was a giant giveaway to the insurance companies, but they could have at least spent a few months arguing that we all need universal health care, but they didn't do that. They just said, oh, Obamacare, because they at the end of the day, the Democrats work for the health insurance as much as companies, as much as the Republicans do. So they don't actually care about you. They're not actually working for you. They don't actually fight for you. And so that's layer two of this story. Now, you do get that layer from a lot of independent media. Occasionally, you even get it from mainstream media, rarely. Then layer three on this story is that this is an insane Band-Aid on a broken system. The idea of only making insulin $35 on an incredibly broken system. That is such a level of stupidity and bullshittery to the American people. It'd be like saying, the police killings have really gotten out of hand, right? We've got over 1,200 people killed this past year, and that's actually half of it because the Lancet Medical Journal says it's double that, but most of them aren't called killings. So we got 24 people this past year killed by American police. That is fucked up. Here's what we're going to do. We are going to say the police are only allowed to kill 2,200. We are capping police killings at 2,200. That's as dumb as this shit. It's like saying that people are dying in car crashes. The cars are let's say there was a faulty car that kept blowing up, and they were like, you know what, we are going to cap the explosions in the Toyota Camrys at 1,000 people a year. We are capping it right there. That's it. You get to kill 1,000 people. This is like saying that, the pedophilia in the church is rampant, right? I remember a few years ago, I was covering the story that in one grand jury report in Pennsylvania had found that 1,000 people had been, when they were children, they're adults now, but 1,000 people had been sexually molested by priests, by over 300 priests. And that's just the people that came forward. 1,000 people just in Pennsylvania. So that's the level of the church pedophilia that's going on. Insane levels. And this story about the insulin is equivalent to going, okay, we're not going to let priests molest anybody, any children between the hours of 7 p.m. and 8 p.m. 7 p.m. and 8 p.m., there's no molesting of children in the church. And here's the thing is, do you not vote for that? Do you say that's a negative thing? That sounds like a positive thing. Kids don't get molested from 7 to 8 p.m. But it's a Band-Aid on a massive problem. You're ignoring the entire breadth of the problem. How about we sit and have a debate about the entirety of the molestation? How about we sit and rape? Let's not just pretend that it's only molestation. It's all of the things, all of the horror shows. But that's equivalent to this, we're capping insulin at $35. Why don't we have a debate about the entirety of what's going on here? Of the fact that healthcare should be a human right, of the fact that our healthcare system in America is alone in the developed world in terms of destroying lives, the fact that 50% of everybody who gets diagnosed with cancer will lose their entire life savings, 50%, whether they had insurance or not. I think it's actually might be higher than 50%. I might actually be lowering that. The fact that the number one cause of bankruptcies in America, it might be the lockdown now, but initially it was, until recently, it was healthcare bills. Number one cause of bankruptcy, lives just endlessly destroyed by our insane healthcare system, and he's capping insulin. Honestly, it's almost insulting to even act like this. You've done something for us, you piece of human garbage. All right, let's see what I have time for. I think I have time for all of these. All right, let's keep it going. But actually, before I forget, please hit subscribe, hit the bell icon. If you're at Rumble, hit follow. Trying to get up to 40,000 followers on Rumble. Thanks to everybody who's supporting me there. If you have a chance and you have a couple of pennies to rub together, join leecamp.net. You get all kinds of exclusive content, including Q&As with me every Friday. All right, let's keep it going. Here is, and there's a new episode of Most Censored News right now over at youtube.com/behind the headlines. So, as you all know, the workers have been standing up, fighting back in a bigger way than they have over many years. This says, let's see here. The remarkable spikes in union activity over the last few years have given many on the left cause for hope. Could we be on the precipice of a resurgent, newly galvanized U.S. labor movement? Could the workers across this country finally be going, I think we're getting fucked. Hold on, let me think about it. Yeah, that's what that is. That's what I'm feeling. I think we're getting fucked. In the first 3 quarters of 2022, the National Labor Relations Board documented a 53% increase in organizing petitions, including startling wins by new independent unions at Starbucks, Amazon, Trader Joe's, and numerous others across many sectors. There's a widespread sense that a qualitative shift has taken place. And hell yeah for that. They then say, that said, despite the perceptible increase in agitation on quantitative measures, the picture is not so rosy. Overall union density, in fact, declined in 2022 to a new low of 10.1%. So Then they get into this is from Truth Out, by the way. Then they get into how exactly these unions, these corporate shitbags have been destroying unions and destroying the efforts to form unions. And I found it interesting because people don't realize the amount of effort and the amount of money that goes into simply stopping the little buds of organizing in a workplace. The little a couple of conversations are had. Hey, maybe we should be in a union, and all of a sudden, people are fired, purged, all kinds of shit goes down. And this gets into how much they spend, $340 million last year, but also their efforts. It says the level of the efforts. In response to the uptick in unionization efforts, corporate bosses have turned to their reliable toolkit of anti-union tactics, the mainstays of management clampdowns, store closings, firings, intimidation, the hiring of replacement workers or scabs to neutralize strikes, surveillance, and illegal manipulation of union elections are just as familiar as they were in the early 20th century, if lighter on club-wielding Pinkertons, though the mercenary detectives and picket line violence are not entirely a thing of the past, which doesn't really surprise me. Managements, following the advice of their expensive consultants, have found some success in splitting worker solidarity through cynical application of social justice rhetoric and nebulous progressive values. They may recite the proper ideological shibboleths, but they offer little substantive shop floor change to match laundering exploitative practices. And this is pretty incredible that they, and although it doesn't surprise me, it's one of these things where it's not shocking at all, but it's you go, it's nice to see the proof. So they're spending all this money, and one of the things that this money spent on these, like these are basically union busting experts. They are advisory companies designed to tell you how to crush unions when they've started, how to crush the beginnings of unions. And I just listed some of the tactics, but one of the ones that I didn't know was going on, but it doesn't surprise me at all, is they use the rhetoric of like social justice or wokeism or all of these nice liberal terminology in order to actually crush unions. One of the examples they give is that, unions are almost always begun by the average workers, and they have to be created by the average workers coming together against or behind the backs of management. So management either doesn't know what's going on, or they know what's going on and they don't really have the ability to fight it. But so often there's criticism of those managers, right? They treat me like shit. They won't give me a raise. They're not paying me for overtime. They're insisting I take overtime even when I don't want it. All of those things. A lot of complaints of management. Well, one example that they gave of using pretend social justice was that one of these managers at one of these companies, I can't remember which one, was a black woman, right? Not a surprise. A lot of managers are people of color. And one of the managers is a black woman. And they were saying that the criticism of management was criticism of a black woman, which clearly equals racism. So basically, if management is not a white male, you may not criticize it, which is fucking incredible. And it again doesn't surprise me at all. This is what corporate America does. It's what corporate America and capitalism really in general, the capitalist class, the rich class that runs things. This is what they do in order to they commodify, or commodify is not the word I'm looking for, but really co-opt anything that can be useful to their ends to destroy revolutionary movements, cooperative movements, collective movements, mutual movements, anything that is the opposite of separate, individualistic, capitalist, cutthroat, destroy thy neighbor policies. And so they go, hey, they look around and go, hey, it seems like all of a sudden America, a lot of America, I don't, you guys can argue about the percentages. A lot of America seems to right now care if racism is a problem. They didn't used to. A lot of America didn't used to care. A lot of America, a lot of the liberal class, and, I think a lot of liberals are good people, just like a lot of Republican Americans. I don't mean Republicans in the fucking Senate and House, but right wingers across America. A lot of them are good people. They're misled, they're confused, but a lot of them are good people. So you have a lot of liberals across America that are good people that have been confused by our mainstream garbage media, by our politicians. And thank goodness a lot of people know that racism is a problem in America. But now you have corporate America being like, so if we just yell racism whenever a union bubbles up, whenever people start organizing, we can create a toxic system that stops, or a toxic environment that stops people from unionizing. And it fucking works. It works some of the time. Not all the time. Some people are smart enough to get around it. But this is some of the type of advising that these anti-union companies do in order to advise corporate America on how to crush you, on how to crush average workers. And, just to go through the layers of reality we're dealing with here. So on one is layer one is kind of what you'd hear on the mainstream media. There's been an uptick in unions. Are unions helping people? Is this union a good union? Is this one, is a union, there's people who want to unionize in Amazon. Is that a good thing? Is that a bad thing? That's kind of surface level. Layer two is the anti-labor consulting that this article does a good job of pointing out, Truth Out. And even layer two is not allowed on mainstream media, right? This is Truth Out. This is a non-mainstream outlet. So even layer two, not allowed on mainstream outlets, will not be seen by the vast majority of Americans, cannot be discussed by the vast majority of Americans. Occasionally you'll get a little New York Times article in there. New York Times will throw in a layer two every once in a while when it helps them to make you think that they matter and to make you think that they're on your side. That's what New York Times will do. They'll throw in something like that to make you go, maybe they are reporting the truth. So that's layer two. Layer three is this using woke terminology, using social justice terminology to try and crush union efforts. That layer wouldn't even be in a New York Times article. I'd be very surprised if it were. And most people aren't talking about it, won't talk about it, and are afraid to say, hey, can you believe it? They're using the idea of racism, the idea of stopping racism to crush union. A lot of people are even afraid to have that discussion, that's a real thing that goes on. But of course, corporate America doesn't give a fuck. They'll use any weapon they can. They'll use an earthquake gun, all right? They would fire an earthquake gun at your face right now. They so would if you joined a union. Oh, they'd love an earthquake gun. Seriously, how many years away from that? Like, what, 5, 7? Elon Musk has one in the trunk of his car, doesn't he? Yeah, he does. Motherfucker. All right. Number 4 layer of reality, the one that you won't get from even Truth Out here, because they can't say it, is that the idea of wage slavery as a way to set up a system is insanity. And the fact that we essentially can't even talk about it. Like, you can't even talk to you could sit down, you could have a group of family members and friends, and half of them work in a goddamn mine getting black lung all day. Half of them dig in the tar sands. They're going to die at age 37 because they look like they're 75. Like, those could be the type of people you sit down with. And if you said, hey, isn't this fucked up that we have to work at shit jobs in order to just, have an existence, in order to just be here on this planet? You essentially have to have some job you hate. And they'd probably get up and leave or get upset with you or say, what the fuck are you talking about? Or saying, I don't know, I like my job. I get weekends off. That's how you decide if you like your job, how little time you have to be there. Does that tell you something? It is... the amount of social engineering, and I'm sorry if you guys have heard me say this before, but The amount of social engineering that was required to make people think that, okay, you're born free for about 8 minutes, and then you start working for corporate America so that you can pay them to try and rent your weekends back. If I work at a job I hate for fucking 70% of my waking hours, will you give me the 30% of the waking hours, please? Please, will you let me? If I work straight for 3 years, will you let me have a weekend trip to Greece? Please, corporate America. I mean, the idea that that's the best we can come up with on how to set up this system. Couldn't come up with anything else. That's the only way. Industrial capitalism, been around for 200 to 400 years, if you really exaggerate it. And yet, everybody that you talk to in your life thinks it's the best we'll ever come up with. There's nothing else. We can never evolve past this. By the way, folks, in case you don't understand this, we, meaning humans, not you and I, we'll be long gone, but we, humans, will view right now as the most bizarre blip in the evolution of humankind. Like the Dark Ages, or worse. We will view it as this crazy, bizarre blip of a shitstorm. And now I get there could be two versions of that. It could be fucking destroy everything with capitalism, eat all the animals, fuck all the trees, burn all the trees, and it could be 12 humans still scraping by who have that view of this being the most bizarre Dark Ages ever. Or we could actually evolve into better human beings, come up with a new system that actually is sustainable, that actually makes it so spaceship Earth can keep traveling rather than turning into a black little fucking dark shriveled dingleberry. We could come up with that version. So those are the two versions, but in either one of them, humans will look back at this time as a crazy. Yeah, do you remember when they did humans did something called capitalism that just ate everything and turned the world to just a charcoal briquette? Isn't that wild? Isn't that wild? We will be a blip. That's my positive note. It's funny. That sounds like a negative note. That's actually a positive. To me, thank God this bizarre time when we just destroy this planet is a blip. It's a blip. It's going to be a tiny little piece of nothing. If you're wondering how long history is, we live closer to the T-Rex in time than the T-Rex ever lived to the Stegosaurus. All right? That's how long the dinosaurs were on this planet. We've been here for like that. Wasn't even a good snap. We get a good one. We've been here like that. And the dinosaurs did way better. Way better. I heard they made better movies too. Just because Jurassic Park. Excellent. Okay, I want to get to the videos of AOC and Tucker Carlson. That will be rumble.com/Lee Camp. If you're watching this anywhere else, please come join me at rumble.com/Lee Camp. It's free to watch over there. If you're watching on Rumble right now, then this will continue. But either way, if you are so lazy that you can't type in Rumble, rumble.com/Lee Camp. If you are that lazy, I hope you will, and you're quitting. You're calling it quits. You're not leaving it out on the field, which you really should. If you're quitting, I hope you will at least become a member at leecamp.net. Join me over there. But let's go over to rumble.com/Lee Camp and look at some AOC and some Tucker Carlson.